Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. First and foremost, I need to apologize for my voice. I'm being punished for not recording this on Thursday or Friday like I was supposed to. And by procrastinating, the universe said, here's some laryngitis. So usually I would hold off on recording anything. Last year I went through a really bad bout of recurring laryngitis for 3 or 4 months. It really messed with my ability to stay on top of my work and talk and teach in my stories and get on the podcast. And I decided that this episode that was ready to go for this week for you guys, beyond me telling you who these amazing women were, I did not want to sit on it. I did not want to wait. And so I have been over here drinking hot beverages to try to just soothe my throat for this morning so I could get in and quite literally record this 2-minute little piece for you. So I apologize that I sound not well, but I feel fine. I literally just have laryngitis. So today's episode was a really fun interview. These two women are doing something in the fertility space that I actually hadn't heard of before. And I think it's such a beautiful offering, not just in their community, but through COVID pivoting and bringing their amazing way to support the fertility community into the online space. So I sat down with both Angela Thayer and Judy Simon. Angela is a triple board certified practitioner in reproductive endocrinology and infertility, OBGYN, and lifestyle medicine. And she's also a plant-based chef. And Judy Simon, who is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and she specializes in reproductive health, founded Mind Body Nutrition, LLC. She is a clinical instructor and staff dietitian at the University of Washington. Two really powerhouse women coming together from two different backgrounds and ways in which they can support the community and bringing and melding this beautiful combination of what Dr. Thayer has to offer, what Judy has to offer. And they actually created a program called Food for Fertility. And we actually spent the first few minutes of the episode talking about it because I was so intrigued. They brought women together and basically taught them how to cook. And they used these cooking classes to also share how food can be medicine and what foods to include and how to prepare these foods, which is so huge. I share in the episode that I'm not the cook in my family. You guys, if you follow me for any length of time, you've definitely heard me say that before. And I can get very, not experimental and nervous in the kitchen. I was a vegetarian for a big hunk of my life, in which you typically learn how to cook. And so I'm not comfortable cooking meat and I don't really know spices and things like that. And so to have a place to go and be able to explore flavors with two women who, are trained, but then also have this beautiful extra piece of knowledge of okay, we're going to teach you how to make these foods and we're going to teach you how to make them good. And we're going to teach you how to make foods that are good for your fertility as well. So I just loved this. I loved this conversation. I felt, we have a lot of different topics of nutrition on the podcast, but I feel like Angela and Judy really brought a very interesting take on how to eat for fertility. They also have a book coming out on April, oh gosh, I wrote it down, but I actually don't remember right now, April 9th or April 12th, sometime in the next week or so. It's called Getting to Baby, the Food First Fertility Plan to Improve Your Odds and Shorten Your Time to Pregnancy. They co-authored this beautiful book. There's stories in there from clients that took their Food for Fertility program, but there's also lots of really simple, easy recipes. And what I love about this book and about our conversation was it really was about how do we add to people's lives instead of taking away. And if you've noticed lately, that's been a big theme here on the Fertility Confidence podcast and also in our community fertility confidence method of, okay, yes, sometimes we need to say listen, if your partner's drinking 20 drinks a week, we want to have a conversation about turning that down. But a lot of our conversations with our clients and with our community is also how do we add? What can we bring in? Because it can feel so depriving to constantly be I have to cut this, I have to cut that, I have to cut this, I have to cut that. And Angela and Judy do a really great job in both in this book and with their clients and in their programs and in their lessons, of helping to share, well, what can we actually bring in? What can we actually add to this piece, which I absolutely loved. So we talked about their 3 principles of the fertility promoting diet, which I shared with them, like, oh, you know what? These are also like my 3 main pillars, but I word them sort of differently. So that was really nice to see. We got into the nitty gritty about why those things are important. We talked about some tips and tricks for those of you who might be nervous in the kitchen, like myself, and how we can, work on adding things and what that looks like, and playing around and experimenting with food. And I think the biggest thing I took away from this conversation is like, how do we make this fun again? We also talked about some specific ways to how to move your body and other aspects of fertility. The good thing about their book is it's not just about food. They have those other principles that we talk about here and in Fertility Confidence Method about movement and mindfulness and using other parts of your body and your system and how to nourish them to overall promote your fertility. So I hope that you enjoy this episode with Angela and Judy. I definitely enjoyed sitting down with them. You can grab their book, Getting to Baby, in the next couple of weeks over on Amazon, or check out some of your local bookstores. And I'm going to pop some links in the show notes for you guys to be able to get to know a little bit more about them and where to find Getting to Baby. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. I am sitting here with Judy and Angela. Thank you guys for coming on and hanging out with me today.
Thank you so much.
We're so excited to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you. Why don't we start with, I've spent some time going through your book. I loved the information inside. I can't wait to kind of dig deeper into some of those nitty gritty pieces for our women, specifically around like nutrition and different topics with fertility. But why don't we start with just a little intro to who you two are?
Well, I am Angela Thayer. I am board certified in reproductive endocrinology and infertility, obstetrics and gynecology, and lifestyle medicine. And I am also a plant certified chef.
Cool. Judy, what about you?
So I am a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and a certified health education specialist. And although our training has been different, where we really come together is both of us for probably close to the last 2 decades have really been involved in providing fertility care.
Mm-hmm. How did you guys meet?
Well, we met at the University of Washington initially when, I started there, and I was working a lot with women with polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, metabolic issues. And I was really looking for a partner, somebody, a dietitian who really could understand how important the diet and movement component was to their overall health and metabolism and their endocrine system, how their hormones functioned. And Judy and I found each other over there, and we started working together just with common patients. Mm-hmm. And then we decided, how fabulous would it be if we could bring some of these women together and kind of teach the concepts collectively in a class. And so then eventually we started teaching classes together.
Oh, that's so cool. I feel like you guys are a perfect combination of like exactly what I am also trying to do in the fertility space of showing that it's not one way or the other. It's not the natural way or the medical way, that it really does need to be a combination of both things.
Right. Very, very integrative. And as we moved on into our private practices, and, I would just see one woman after another. I'm like, Angela, we need to have a class. I know they would like each other. I know they would support each other. And really that has been the core of the work that we did, 12 years of teaching food for fertility classes. No one else was doing this. There wasn't like a template. So, using my skills as a health educator and a dietitian and having a medical director, and having access to using very unique spaces. Like, at first our classroom was a kind of the break room, right, Angela? It was a break room, and I would bring all the stuff in together. And I had wonderful graduate students that would volunteer. And I think the first day we massaged kale salad together. We learned about greens and fertility. And then as it expanded, because, we were seeing patients beyond our own that would be referred to our program, we had a bigger space with more cooking space. And that's really where we got to not just talk about healthy lifestyle, but actually live it. Women taking walks together, doing yoga, stretching, setting goals, and then trying all kinds of foods that they had never heard of. So this was a really fun, like 6 to 7 weeks on a Saturday. And then we pivoted to virtual cooking in their own kitchens when COVID hit. It was right in the middle of a class. We had to make that switch, literally.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that, Judy, before we popped on too, about how that pivot. So you guys literally started teaching cooking classes virtually and just kept the ball rolling.
Right. And, the thing about the teaching culinary classes, and this was kind of before I recognized it was called, culinary medicine, or, later we're like, oh, this is culinary medicine, everything we've been doing for the past decade. But we kind of, changed as we learned with the women in the class. So women came in, everybody kind of came in with different sets of skills and knowledge. And we really tried to broaden it out for everybody. And we found that a lot of people weren't quite as comfortable cooking like the vegetable dishes or the legumes, or fish even. And so kind of we focused on some of those things that we know have high fertility potential, and teaching kind of those skills, and also how to flavor things so they taste delicious, and then they can up their game really to improve their fertility naturally.
Right. So I'll tell you guys a not so secret, but I do not cook. I do not cook in my house. Luckily for me, my husband does the cooking. And I literally am listening to you going, this would have made such a big difference for me. And I can already see so many of my clients that when we're recommending recipes and different foods and things, I know if someone were to give me some of the recipes that we give out, I'd be like, I don't even know what that ingredient is, because that's just not where I've been. I was a vegetarian for a very, very long time. So I didn't learn how to cook meat in that time frame of learning how to cook that stuff before I moved out of the house. So I can totally see where the hands-on training and experience just takes away some of that fear and uncertainty, which is already so high in the fertility journey to begin with, and just make it that much easier. Do you feel like your clients had that experience through the program?
Oh, absolutely. They just, at the end of the 6 weeks, some of the women would be like, I never used to eat breakfast, but this class was in the morning, and now I'm eating all these grains and fruits and vegetables, and I really like it. And so we've had just groups of women with PCOS who were not cycling. By the end of the class, they're like, yeah, I got my period, and all I did was, make some changes, and it was amazing until they felt so empowered to see, what a difference that could make. And that's why we included in our book, a minimum of 10 of those stories of different women and their stories with lifestyle and how that made a difference on their journey.
Yeah, it's definitely powerful.
And, then it kind of expanded too, because although we started with some women who had PCOS, it really expanded because people were interested, and people were always asking us, coming and saying, hey, can I take that class? And so then we just opened it up to everybody really, and met people where they were. And that was really important to say, what are individual needs? And the other thing, then when we wrote the book, that was the impetus, was people kept asking, how can we do this? We can't do this where we are if they're in another part of the country. And so the idea was, let's translate as best we can the class into a book form and really try to give people, guidance on how to make these small changes over time, take as much time as you need, but where might you need more attention? Where might you need less? And maybe pick up some of these tips along the way. And if you can, make it social, make it fun, cook with your partner, cook with friends. But yeah, or if you're not the cook in the family, then, share this information. We did include partners in some of
Mm-hmm.
these.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we started doing COVID, we'd have somebody's mom pop on, or a friend. And so we made it really communal and fun. And I think being around food is such a collectively wonderful experience and a social experience, that we want people to enjoy that aspect of food as well.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that I really enjoy in this space and getting the pleasure of interviewing so many different people and checking out books and all the things is we all have obviously a very similar philosophy and concept, but potentially kind of packaged up a little bit differently. And one thing that I found when I was reading through Getting to Baby was I loved how you guys outlined the three main principles of a fertility promoting diet. So Judy, why don't we start? Maybe I'd love to get into the three because I think these are three really great tips for people.
Sure.
So why don't we expand on kind of like why these three things, why the fiber piece, the glycemic index, the antioxidants, and we can kind of dig deeper into those pieces.
Well, I'll start off with the first one. And, and I have to give Angela a lot of credit because, with writing this book, it was going to be a cookbook at first, right? Cookbook and stories. And we're like, no, we need to have people know why. Why is fiber important? Why is the glycemic? So I like that it did come together. Like these are the basic building blocks. And the first one is, you're right. It is more of an anti-inflammatory, eating style. That's high in fiber for a lot of health reasons, but particularly for fertility, we want to promote a better uterine environment for implantation. Okay. So we want to make sure, because we have women with, 1 in 10 women have endometriosis, which is inflammatory, and that could be impacting the uterine lining. We have, maybe 1 in, 9 or 10 women having PCOS. There's a lot of inflammatory conditions that can make it more challenging, for regular ovulation and for implantation. So if you're providing your body with more foods that are decreasing the oxidative stress in one's body, and some of it we tell people is like, you can't avoid all oxidative stress. We breathe, our organs work. We take a run, which is a good thing, and we take a walk, and there's some oxidative stress. But if you have foods like, fruits and vegetables and whole grains and fish and things on board that are rich in antioxidants, they're going to do their job on reducing that stress in your body. So we want all those reproductive organs to really have that nice environment. And now we're learning so much, we're learning so much about gut biome, but now when we go to these fertility conferences, we're learning about uterine biome and vaginal biome. And it's all kind of interrelated, and learning about the immune system so that, we're working on helping the reproductive organs to be optimal, but we're also want the person's health to be optimized, right? So if they have any other inflammatory types of things going on, prediabetes, that's why we're always checking on blood sugars and histories and things like that. So really, I would say the first one is that anti-inflammatory and high fiber. And talking about high fiber, I'm going to let Angela, she loves to talk about the gut. So Angela, come on in and all our good fiber stuff.
Well, yeah, all three of those concepts really tie together to me. Right. So the kind of lower glycemic index, by definition, kind of we're talking about eat foods with fiber or don't eat a lot of high sugar foods or processed grains that are really going to be quickly broken down into glucose and cause a more rapid rise in glucose and thereby a more rapid rise in insulin. And you get these swings that can really kind of wreak havoc on your metabolism and stress the body. And so that contributes to inflammation over time and can cause deposition of fat in the liver and other tissues and makes things not work as efficiently with your metabolism. So, we can help the by eating, lower glycemic index or foods with more fiber or less sugar or processed grains. That's that side of it, also kind of tying back to the anti-inflammatory diet. And then the antioxidants too, where you get most of your antioxidants, is going to be mainly fruits and vegetables, obviously fish as well with the omega-3s, but all the fruits and vegetables that have those antioxidants also have fiber. So they're going to be anti-inflammatory. And the antioxidants are just this huge mega boost, for the way the cells work, right? So the mitochondria within the cells, it's providing, that antioxidant that, it's kind of helping balance that out so the cells can work better with both, cell division for an egg, because the egg is the workhorse, and the sperm that has to, get to the egg. The mitochondria help with how quickly the sperm swim and function. And so those three concepts kind of all tie together the way, nothing's isolated in the body. They're all working together, but it all comes down to, we say the foundation is, starting with the fruits and vegetables, because that's an easy thing that's identified in our culture, is that most people tend to not eat as many vegetables as would be recommended. And we know the huge benefits those offer. So that's, we want to, again, tell people the why. Why is this important? What are these things doing in your body and with the reproductive process? And then, helping them get there.
Right. A question I get asked a lot when it comes to food and having this conversation about fruits and vegetables and the power of antioxidants and balancing our blood sugar is, well, should I not eat fruit? Like, isn't fruit high in sugar? I'd love to get your take, Angela, on the fruit and sugar concept.
So fruit does have sugar. Certain fruits have more sugar than others, but fruit also has fiber if you're eating it whole. So I would say that's a key difference. Most people aren't going to eat like 3 apples. Yeah. But people can down a pretty big glass of apple juice, and that's just pure sugar, right? So there's a big difference in, if you're going to eat 1 or 2 pieces of fruit in a day, great, but putting a bunch of fruit in, or juicing it and drinking it, you're going to get a much higher glucose boost if you have more servings of fruit in a day. So I think for, certain people who are more sensitive, then they do need to pay attention to that. But for most people, we don't really tell them they need to limit whole fruit servings. Right. Yeah. What do you think, Judy?
Well, I think it's a balance too. I talk about what I want. I want them to see, women need more than 25 grams of fiber a day. And I'm like, did you know raspberries are very low glycemic? They're not that sweet. They're actually a little bit tart. A cup is 8 grams. So if you've got, you work some berries in at breakfast, you're a third of the way there. And the fun thing is, these are the add-ons, the fruits and vegetables, even kind of taking someone where they're at. What we find is people come in and like, my gut is so much happier. Like, it's nice to make people healthier while they're on this journey. They're like, I'm pooping like a queen. It feels good. And I'm like, it's the fiber. And then sometimes, Kelsey, like when people want to track something and we don't want them to get too obsessed on anything, I'm like, if you really want to, if you're curious, see how many grams of fiber you eat in a day, if you're curious, and they see that difference. So I think your fruit question, that's a good one. If you're making a smoothie that has 6 servings of fruit and maybe it has no protein in it, that's not going to be very balanced. It's probably going to be maybe shorter term energy. You'll get some antioxidants, but we'll talk about working them in through the day and really picking either the seasonal ones or frozen. When berries aren't in season, they're great frozen, and ways to work them in, because we all want something that tastes sweet too, but they had the benefits. But we're kind of like unlimited on the vegetables, like have a party on vegetables all day long. Yeah.
And you're not wrong. I do, even myself included, some days I'm like, I'll go to bed and be like, I did not eat enough vegetables today. Like, it's something you do have to be aware and think of. So when you're working with your clients, what foods do you guys feel are very fertility promoting that a lot of us are just underutilizing?
Go first, Angela. Go ahead.
Oh,
Jump in.
well,
Jump in.
I think you just, we kind of came up with some lists at the end of easy tips to remember. But, one thing, that's commonly known, it's not like new, we didn't make it up, eat the rainbow, right? So I think, when somebody's either shopping at a store or farmer's market, are they thinking about the colors of when they're in the produce section to think about, am I getting a variety of colors? Obviously the greens, but then the yellows, the oranges, the reds, the blues, the whites, so they're because each color is going to have different phytonutrients and bring something different to the table for them. So that's, again, and if you start in the produce section of your grocery store, that's a great place. And we always encourage people to try something new. So throughout the day, obviously, you're not going to necessarily eat every color, but, if you can try to get those, at least 5 servings or more and think about, is there an opportunity to get something in at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, and think about like adding in. So we always add in, like if we're making something, throw in some greens, throw in whatever it is with something quick and easy at the end, some raw carrots or a radish or whatever it is, a baked sweet potato or a microwave sweet potato, is great. And so that's my first tip.
Yeah, and I would add on veggies too is start earlier in the day. Don't wait till dinner to think about, hey, I haven't had anything. And so, we're pretty plant forward in our book, but what we like to say is if you're making a pot of something a week, like maybe it's a chili or it's one of our like lentil kale soups or something that's going to have at least 3 or 4 vegetables in it. I always say make a pot of something that could be one dinner. And for me, I like to have those leftover lunches. I mean, those work well, or they're 2. And how many veggies can you work in that meal? Or if you're roasting that big pan of veggies, they're delicious at breakfast. They can get mixed into an omelet or a frittata. The greens cook down if you're eating pasta or grains and you're draining it. Throw some greens in at the end, some spinach and stuff. And I know last night my dinner looked great because I had rainbow chard and then I had sweet potatoes. I'm like, ooh, it's so appealing too. When you have all those colors, it looks good too. It not only tastes good, it looks good. And so that's why when we have our fertility plate, we talk about try to have half the plate be vegetables. And we acknowledge that, everybody's needs are different. And we have some women that are very active. And in fact, we're seeing them because they have hypothalamic amenorrhea. And if anything, they're not eating enough. So for that woman, I don't want her to just have the power salad bowl. I might want to shrink it down and maybe do, okay, well, you cook veggies, but you're going to need more energy from other sources too. So that's where everybody's needs are going to be a little bit individual. We kind of give the template for this is going to give the nutrients you need, but working with someone one-on-one, for getting back to period, as you all know, there's a lot of reasons why women don't ovulate and have regular cycles. So kind of knowing a little bit more, but food helps. It's just in what quantities may make a difference for some women.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have to personalize that. And this whole conversation about vegetables, I think, is big and a good one for people to hear. And then the other food that I feel like people shy away from and are missing out on is fish. Like it's such an acquired taste, right? So how do you guys help women introduce more fish in your cooking process?
Well, I think you can start with it's hard if you haven't grown up eating fish or you don't know how to cook it. It's actually quite easy to cook, right? It's quite easy, and it is not it doesn't have to be super expensive. You don't have to buy the top end of anything. So you can buy it frozen from Trader Joe's and just have some in your freezer and then, thaw it out. So I think fish is easy to either do stovetop or in the oven. It doesn't take much heat to get it cooked all the way through. And for me, the key is not over drying it. If you overcook fish, it's gonna not taste good at all. And then, certainly don't microwave your fish after, like it's, for leftovers, that's hard. Like we'd rather eat cold salmon on a salad the next day. If we've cooked some salmon and had some leftovers. And we love the little fish like sardines and anchovies to incorporate. Like anchovies, you can throw again in a pot of pasta sauce, right? Or something just on like tiny little bits in a dressing if you make yourself for a salad. So I think just trying those little exposures, or if you're really not super hot on the flavor, you can use salmon, let's say, the way you'd use chicken, right? So you could cut it into little pieces or little strips and throw it into a stir fry, or throw it in with some vegetables. So you're getting, the omega-3s and the good protein, but the flavors are mixed. And so, and you can kind of get your palate a little bit used to it. It is a bit of an acquired taste if you're not used to it. And then when you go to restaurants, order the fish dish, because they probably are going to prepare it in a way that you might not at home, and it might be delicious, and you might decide you want to try and replicate that at home.
Yeah, you can learn something from them.
Yeah. I was just added on fish. We've had success in classes. We've done a lot of sheet pan meals where we've done like I think we have salmon and broccoli in our book, and, ways to do it like that. We've even done like a tuna, like just packaged tuna in white bean and red onion, kind of like a spread, which can be yummy. So really, and then what I kind of love about, like, because we do encourage fish twice a week when possible, is, if they have that leftover that they had in the sheet pan, putting it in a wrap or something, or making a salmon taco the next day with some slaw, putting it in a salad, putting it in your eggs. Leftover salmon in your eggs is delicious. So trying to give them like really easy ideas, and then looking at what culture someone's from. Like if I have someone who's South Asian and Indian, she'll be like, oh yeah, I could make a fish curry. I know how to do that. Like, what's your culture? I've done stews, like more Brazilian tomatoey stews, where you just cut up pieces of rockfish, put it in at the end, and it is easy. And so I think providing some recipes and some easy guidance. Right now, chicken and meat are so expensive. Having some fish, when you look at prices and the value for the protein and the omega-3s that they're getting, it can work in pretty nicely for most people.
Yeah, I love that. I did grow up eating fish, always liked fish, and very much lost my taste for salmon through my pregnancies. Unfortunately, it was like one of my big aversions, and then it just never really came back to me. So we've recently been experimenting with different sauces and doing curry spices and like actually doing something more to fish than just putting lemon on it, which is what we always did, right? Like that's how my mom cooked it growing up. So like that's how we cooked it, and it's really opened up our palates at home, not my children's so much, but like mine, of being like, okay, we could actually make this fish something completely different with. Now we have all these ideas so sometimes you just have to experiment. I find try and just see a recipe and be like, you know what, let's just try it. And if it's not good, we'll have something else that we can heat up.
Right. Like, or buy half the amount, right? Buy half and just make a half recipe if you're like, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. So, like instead of, a lot of our cooking, we tell people to, double the recipe so you have leftovers. But in this case, if you're trying something new and you're kind of like, I might have to pitch the whole thing, maybe you don't make that much of a commitment, just again, trying it, buy less and give it a go.
Yeah. Awesome. So one thing when I was going through Getting to Baby, I was, we're talking lots about food in the early parts of the book. And then I was really pleasantly surprised to see that you guys do pull in the other lifestyle pieces, and specifically talking about movement and how we should be moving our bodies in a nourishing way. And that's something we teach inside Fertility Confidence Method as well, is, how do we cycle sync our movement? How do we move to actually help our hormones and work with our hormones and not against our hormones? So I keep hearing, we always hear all of the like biohacking, health, trendy stuff. And I feel like exercise zones and like what zone you're in is such a hot topic right now. Angela, why don't you explain to us when I'm saying exercise zones and what you shared in the book here, like what does that actually mean and how do we use that concept for fertility promoting?
Yeah. Sure. I mean, the exercise zones, the idea behind that is, where is your heart rate? How much of your maximum heart rate? What's your exertion level, right? When you're exercising. And, it's based on different levels. And so for some people, they kind of want to know where they are. I think this trend came about when they had all the, equipment in the gyms and they'd show you your zones and are you in an aerobic capacity zone or a fat burning zone? And so, the recommendations of, the general recommendations of 150 minutes of moderate intensity a week for most people is kind of in that aerobic zone, right? So, it's not, somebody could tell you're working out, you're a little bit short of breath, but you're still able to carry on a conversation. Whereas, a higher aerobic zone, you're panting, you're really kind of maxing out. You're not going to be able to really have a conversation with anybody. And then if you're just sitting here talking like we are, we're really at a resting zone right now. Mm-hmm. So, the idea, I think, especially for patients who are, anybody, any day, you want to be active and move, and you're not necessarily paying attention to your zones. A lot of what people do in a regular basis on a regular day to day might be a low aerobic zone, just walking around or doing some housework or doing some gardening and this, that, and the other. And then if you're truly exercising, you're getting it up a little bit more. We would get questions like, how much can I exercise? How can I push it? And, that's a question of that. It's hard to know from the IVF literature. We know, kind of, there was a study a while back, if you're training for a marathon, if you're putting on lots of miles and you're in that aerobic zone for lots of hours a week, you might be decreasing your fertility. So we would always tell people if you're training for a marathon or a triathlon, don't do your IVF during that time. Train for your event, enjoy your event, and then plan your, intense fertility treatment. For people not doing IVF, not doing that intense treatment, I think, it could have an effect if you're exercising on an extreme end or putting too many hours in per day or week. But for most people, some amount of certainly baseline regular activity, and then maybe even, a little more on a regular basis is good for us. It's good for our metabolism. It improves insulin sensitivity on a daily basis. It kind of keeps everything running really well.
Right. And I feel like 150 minutes a week feels obtainable, right? Especially when we're talking about that like moderate intensity and helping women understand that you don't need to go to the gym and, obliterate yourself for 90 minutes every day to be healthy, that we can be walking every day and having a more than adequate amount of exercise to check that box on our checklist.
Yeah. We have a lot of women too that, before they're even pregnant, they're like, and I don't want to get gestational diabetes and I don't want to have preeclampsia. I want to have a really great pregnancy. And I go, well, one of the ways we know to reduce risk for those things is at 150 minutes. And like you said, it can be walking. And for the folks we're working with PCOS and insulin resistance, the light strength a couple times a week, which can be yoga or Pilates, a stretch band. No one has time where people are really having, they're struggling like, how do I eat healthy, get enough sleep, do all the things, lifestyle you want us to do? And I'm like, well, have an option for home-based. You know what I mean? There's a lot of videos, there's online communities. And then we really encourage women, like if they say, well, where am I going to get that 30 minutes a day? Maybe it's 2 15-minute walks or it's short movement after a meal, like help them find how they can do that. And that can really make a difference when they're like, okay, I can see that happening. And like Angela said, then you have the people that take it to the extreme. They're the ones that I'm worried about, that they're often underfueled and they're actually having too much stress on their body. And if they tell you they can't bring it down, then we need to bring in some help. Like if that's their identity, then maybe this isn't the right time to work on pregnancy or let's talk to someone. And I guess it kind of comes in with screening for eating disorders, which is something that we always do. Is it can be really hidden because you can look at someone, and we have one person who shared their story in our book, and she failed IVFs, and doctors told her she had really bad egg quality. And then finally one fertility doctor said, well, what are you eating? And she's like, oh my gosh, you're starving. I started to work with her, and her stories in the book, she'd already adopted her first child, and it was like the floodgate opened. She's like, oh, I can eat, because she was such a restrictor. She kind of went to town on it and ovulated before she even got her first period, and got pregnant with baby 2 and then had baby 3. So those 2 babies came without IVF. But no one ever really took a minute to kind of get to know her and screen her. And she went through 2 failed IVF cycles. And it was lack of energy and over exercising.
Yeah.
So
yeah. We see
too
that
much
a
is
lot.
not good.
Yeah.
Extremes are not good, right? We have to check in on those folks, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a happy medium, and exactly like you said, sometimes we might not fully know that we have an unhealthy relationship with movement, and even with food, and especially I find in this space of fertility, it's even harder because women are so in tune with, I have to do everything to get pregnant. I have to be perfect. I have to do this. And I feel like the journey can sometimes breed some of these ideas and concepts. And when women aren't getting proper support, now they're coming, to work with others down the line, and we're kind of having to ravel back and be like, well, actually, let's unlock some of these beliefs we've sort of put in place that are actually, now they weren't likely detrimental at the beginning, but we've just taken them so far out of fear, really, that now they are detrimental. And this whole concept of under eating is something we talk a lot about.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, because it's just,
Kelsey, that's fabulous.
It's important, right?
Yes.
It's so common. It's so common.
And we get people that if they haven't had success, and maybe they had a failed, IVF or something, they're like, well, maybe I wasn't strict enough on all these restrictions that I read about in social media, where they got advice from someone who had no idea what was going on in their life, and they cut out so much. And I'm like, well, would you consider adding back in fertility promoting foods and give that a try? Like, you never want someone to feel bad or shame for what they did or didn't do, especially when their intentions were good. So that's why we tried to be really careful with the book, that we cast a wide net. We talked about all these things. And even when we give these ideas, and the ideas for setting goals, for some people, that's fabulous. For some people, it's okay to just get that affirmation. Yeah, I'm doing that. I've checked that box. And yeah, they have a 6-week plan. Maybe I'll do it over 12 weeks, to have that flexibility, that everybody's needs are going to be a little bit something. But we feel like if someone is reading the book, they wanted that information, and then they can kind of go through and then see, oh, do I need to work with some professionals individually for more individual, information.
Right. So getting to baby, so pretty, so cute.
Our baby
out
on
April 9th. Angela, tell us a little bit about the book.
Oh, well, the book, we really set it up by just kind of introducing the background, like what we know about fertility promoting diets, what's been studied, what it's in the literature. So it's really evidence-based, like, looking at some of the original data from the Nurses' Health Study, observational data, and then other cultures and kind of people seeing similar dietary patterns, and then kind of going through all the food groups. And then at the end, we go through the other things that enhance fertility and the boosters and some of the detractors, things you might want to avoid. But most of the philosophy is about, adding what you might be a little bit short in. So we want to make it more additive, rather than thinking it's restrictive or you're having to cut things out. And, kind of enjoying the process, enjoying the food, learning. It's, life is about learning and acquiring new skills and sharing those skills. And so, we tried to impart all that into the book by kind of having some takeaways at the end of every chapter and some SMART goals, things you might want to try. Those are examples, but kind of setting your own goals for some accountability, and moving through, and hopefully over time, because it's a process. You never know which month is going to work for you and your partner, and wherever you're getting your sperm and your egg and your uterus, because there's lots of ways to make a baby, we know. So, trying to enhance every process that we can to improve things, whether somebody's trying, very just starting out, or, again, they've been in fertility treatments for a while and are looking at next steps. It's all just kind of there for them to say, here's the data, here's what we know, and add what you will, add what you can.
Yeah, I love, and that was definitely the vibe I got. And I really love that approach of what can we add? Because again, in the journey, it's a lot of don't do this, don't do that, take this out, take that out, don't do that. You're doing that wrong. It's all this there's a lot of negative stuff. And it's something that we, over the last year are paying more attention in our languaging and how we're approaching topics, because I'm having clients coming into the programs and it is they're very restricted. They feel very restricted. And now we're dealing with fear. Right. So I love that it was a lot of this is what's great. And this is how you can add it. And this is what's great. And this is how you can add it. And I think it's a really beautiful approach to what can feel like a very daunting topic when it comes to food and nutrition.
Yeah, we just wanted accessibility. We felt like we were sort of pioneers early on, coming up with the whole idea of a class and interdisciplinary, and felt like this is something that somebody could access anywhere and then decide, do they need more help? They would have a good starting piece, on their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can our listeners find out more about you guys and Getting to Baby?
Well, Getting to Baby is at all major booksellers, and check with your small independent stores too, gettingtobabybook.com. They can follow me at Fertile Nutrition. And Angela?
I am at AngelaThyreMD.com, or my Insta is AngelaThyreMD.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that is in the show notes for everybody, and we'll link the book website for everybody in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
As we wrap up here, what I love to always get kind of to put a bow on the end of the conversation is one piece of fertility advice. So Judy, why don't we start with you? One piece of advice you'd love to leave for one of our listeners who's trying to get pregnant.
Keep the food fun. Make sure that when you're focusing on nourishing yourself, you're including your friends or your partner, but keep it fun and light so it doesn't feel like drudgery and you can enjoy it so much more.
Yeah, I love that. What about you, Angela?
So my advice would be, don't be afraid to ask for help, right? I think it can be such a long process, and we can see people trying for years. And don't be afraid to go to your website and sign up with your program, or locally go to a fertility clinic or sign up and see a dietitian if you feel like you need help there, because getting good evidence-based information is just going to help you, and you can decide what you want to do with it. You can decide, if I want to take this information and move forward, or that doesn't work for me. But don't wait too long before you ask for help. If things don't happen kind of quickly, just start getting more information from experts.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. And I love the idea of keeping it fun, because especially as someone who doesn't cook, I definitely can fall in the trap of being like, oh, you have to eat again. I don't want to deal with it. My husband, when he left, he was making fun of me because he found a TikTok or a reel or something about how when your spouse is away, you basically just eat out of the fridge like a trash panda. And I was like, that quite literally is me when you are gone. I do not eat. And please come home. So thank you guys so much. This was such a beautiful conversation. I love what you're doing. I think it's offering so much. I love the idea of making this a more fun and pleasurable experience. Because like I said, I feel like this conversation can get very heavy and also very extreme in some topics.
Yes.
So I love that you're really just coming at it holistically with the evidence, which is so important. The book is fabulous. So definitely
Thank you.
out, check it out. And hopefully I'll be able to chat with you guys again soon. Thanks for
Oh,
coming.
we hope so too.
Thank you, Kelsey. It's been great.
It was wonderful.